Oh, you gorgeous little catastrophe. Somebody's been whispering your name like a prayer they didn't mean to say out loud. And no, not in some backhanded, petty, mean-spirited kind of way. This was something far more dangerous than that. Because what they said about your looks, about your body, about the whole devastating architecture of you, it wasn't rehearsed. It wasn't polite. It was the kind of honesty that sneaks out of a person's mouth before they can slap a hand over it. And honestly, it terrified them a little. So shall we unwrap this together? Because once you hear what was really being said, and I mean really said, underneath all the fumbling and the half-sentences and the way people's voices get quieter when they're confessing something that matters, you're going to understand this strange electricity you've been feeling lately. This hum in your life, this sense that the ground has shifted beneath your feet, even though nothing obvious has moved. Something's been rearranging itself in the background, sweetheart, and you felt it before you could name it. Stay with me. I promise you, by the time we're done here, you are going to look in the mirror and finally see what everyone else already sees. Here is what actually happened. Picture a room. Doesn't matter which one. Could be a kitchen where the coffee's gone cold because nobody's paying attention to it anymore. Could be the front seat of a car with the engine off and the windows fogging up from the weight of the conversation. Could be two people walking somewhere with their phones buried deep in their pockets, for once. Actually present, actually paying attention, and your name came up. Not as a side note. Not tucked into the corner of some other topic. You were the whole symphony, the full arrangement. At first, it started the way these things always do. Kind of surface level, kind of breezy, the way people talk about anyone they know casually. But then something cracked open. The longer they talked about you, the more real it got. The more honest they let themselves be. The more they stopped editing their own thoughts and just said the thing they'd been quietly sitting on. The thing they'd noticed but never bothered to put into words because putting it into words would make it real. And real is a lot harder to ignore. And that's when the whole conversation became something else entirely. Because what came out of their mouth next wasn't the polished, sanitized version people offer when they're being nice just to fill the air. No. It was raw. It slipped out before they could catch it. And honestly, it surprised even them. Because they didn't realize how strongly they actually felt about you until they heard themselves say it out loud, in real time, with no script and no safety net. You have absolutely zero idea how many heads snap the second you walk away from a conversation, a room, a sidewalk, a checkout line. They are literally picking apart your whole aesthetic, not to tear it down, but because they're trying to crack the code on how you make it all look so effortless. It's not about any single feature, any one specific thing they can point to and label. It's the magnetic chaos you radiate without even trying. Believe me, treasure, they are talking about you. They are cataloging your style, your energy, your whole vibe in real time. Like it's field research they didn't sign up for, but can't stop conducting. They weren't running through some checklist, height, bone structure, symmetry, whatever clinical nonsense the world pretends matters. They were talking about the way you carry yourself, the way your body navigates a room without you making any conscious effort to navigate it a certain way, the way you don't beg for attention, but it arrives at your feet anyway, like a tide, like something woven into the physics of how you exist. And that's the part that actually stopped them mid-breath. Not flawlessness, not some airbrushed fantasy version of beauty. It was the effortlessness, the fact that none of it was performed, none of it was curated, none of it was trying. Hold that thought. You're looking at reality all wrong. They thought they broke you, but they just triggered your mutation. I wrote a 73-page blueprint to finalize your transformation. Audiobook or ebook, link in the description. Anyway, back to the madness. You've become the main headline in rooms you haven't even set foot in yet. They see a version of you that is so much more luminous and striking than what you see when you catch your own reflection. There is a specific way you move that makes people feel like they're witnessing something cinematic, something choreographed by accident. Because here's the truth about you that you might not fully grasp yet, darling. There is something about the way you show up that doesn't feel like everybody else. It feels grounded. It feels authentic in a way that's almost unsettling to people who are used to everyone curating a highlight reel of themselves. And that's what they kept circling back to over and over, like a song stuck in their head they didn't want to stop humming. People are genuinely intimidated by how seamlessly you pull everything together. They are scanning for cracks just to reassure themselves that you're human like them. And they are coming up empty. Your physical presence is so loud, it's drowning out every other thought in their head. They're wondering whether you even clock the gravitational pull you have over a room. They said there's something about your energy that makes everything about you, your appearance, your presence, your whole existence, land differently, more magnetic, more arresting, more impossible to look away from. And honestly, they weren't even sure that was the right way to describe it, because it's not something that fits neatly into language. It's something they felt, something that registered in their bones when they thought about you. The way you feel a storm rolling in before you hear the first crack of thunder. To them, you look like you were sculpted by something that took its sweet, deliberate time. They can't stop talking about you because you represent a frequency they're still trying to tune into. If you could eavesdrop on the way they describe your beauty, and I mean really hear it, unfiltered, you'd never question yourself again. You're not just pretty, you're not just handsome, you're an event they didn't have tickets to and weren't dressed for. And the more they talked, the more granular it got. The way you look when you're not performing anything at all. The way your expression shifts organically without being forced into some rehearsed reaction. The way your confidence broadcasts itself, even in the moments when you haven't said a single word. That's the part that caught them completely off guard. Because they suddenly realized this wasn't just about how you physically appear. It was about how being near you actually feels to another person. And that feeling was stronger than they expected, stronger than they'd budgeted for emotionally. Because people do not usually plan to be leveled by someone like that. Pumpkin. It's not in their itinerary. At some point, one of them said something like, "I don't think they even know how they come across." And that part, completely, devastatingly true. Because from where you're standing, you don't get to see yourself the way other people experience you. You don't get the external view. You don't feel the shockwave you send through a room because you're the one generating it, not receiving it. But they do. They're on the receiving end, and they see it with total, unobstructed clarity, even while you're standing there thinking you're just existing like everybody else. Picture yourself as the lead in a film that never stops rolling. Even between takes, the crew, the people orbiting your life, can't stop murmuring about your presence. You don't just walk into a room. You shift the whole composition. Think of yourself as someone who just stepped onto a stage without realizing the spotlight was already locked on them. You might feel like you're just going about your day, but to everyone else, you're the headliner. People aren't just glancing at you. They're studying your gravity. They notice the way you hold yourself, the light behind your eyes, the way your physical presence rewires the energy of whatever space you enter. You've got that unignorable quality that makes people pause their own storylines just to watch yours unfold. Once they started saying it out loud, they couldn't stop. Because the second it left their mouth, it stopped being a private thought drifting around in their head. It became tangible. It became something they had to actually sit with, acknowledge, metabolize. And that acknowledgement changed something in how they felt about you going forward. Because when a person finally lets themselves say out loud what they've been noticing about your looks, about your body, about your whole presence, it doesn't dilute. It concentrates. It becomes more consistent, more present. It sticks. Yeah, it sticks. This didn't evaporate the moment the conversation ended. It turned into something that followed them out the door, down the street, into their own quiet moments. Something they kept replaying, kept examining from new angles, kept feeling in their chest at random points during the day. Because now it wasn't just a passing impression. It was something they'd finally fully admitted to themselves. And once a person admits something like that, once they name it, there's no unnaming it. You can't decide to unfeel something that honest. You become more present to them every single time your name surfaces. Every time they see something that echoes you. Every time they picture your face or the way you moved through that room that one time. And there's always that one time, isn't there? Because now they're not just clocking you from across the room. They feel you. And that's a completely different tier of experience. That's where a passing observation about someone's looks transforms into something with weight, something with momentum, something that starts pulling a person toward you, instead of just letting them admire you from the cheap seats. Now, here's where I want you to actually feel this, instead of just letting it bounce off the intellectual part of your brain. Because there's a very specific reason your looks and your body are the subject of discussion right now. And it's so much bigger than flattery, bigger than a compliment, bigger than some throwaway remark someone made because silence felt awkward. Your body has been changing. Not necessarily in some dramatic transformation you'd spot in a side-by-side photo. I'm talking about the subtle recalibrations, your posture, the way your spine has been stacking itself differently when you walk into a space, expanding instead of contracting, the way your eyes hold steady on someone instead of flinching away first, the way your face, your absolutely stunning face, has started settling into an expression that reads as calm instead of anxious, assured instead of apologetic. Those aren't cosmetic changes, those are signals, and people pick up on signals whether they consciously register them or not. You wake up some mornings and you don't quite recognize the reflection staring back at you. Not because anything's been physically rearranged overnight, but because something behind the eyes is different now. There's a steadiness there that wasn't always present. And that steadiness is exactly what people are responding to when they talk about your looks. They're not describing a face. They're describing a metamorphosis, a version of you that's been quietly assembling underneath the surface for longer than you probably realized, and is now becoming visible enough that other people are catching it before you've even fully caught it yourself. Think about how wild that actually is for a second. Somebody out there, someone who might not even be that close to you, noticed a shift in your presence before you gave yourself any credit for it. That's not coincidence. That's not random noise. People don't react this strongly to someone unless something real is moving underneath the surface, something they can feel even if they can't articulate it. When somebody says there's something different about them lately, what they're actually responding to is your nervous system finally exhaling, your body releasing years of bracing for judgment, your face softening out of the tension it used to carry just to survive a regular Tuesday. And that softening, that settling, it reads to other people as presence, as magnetism, as looking like something they can't quite define but absolutely cannot stop noticing. Here's the deeper layer underneath all of this, and I need you to actually sit with it instead of speed scrolling past it. For a long time, you might have trained yourself to expect less attention on your appearance. Not because you don't deserve it, but because being noticed used to come with a price tag. Maybe somewhere along the way, being seen too much made you a target, made you self-conscious, made you feel like you had to shrink a little, dim your signal, take up less space so nobody had a reason to comment, to compare, to scrutinize. Most importantly, to judge you. So you adapted. You learned to inhabit your body quietly. You learned to let your presence whisper rather than announce itself, because announcing felt risky. But here's the thing about that, sugar plum. Bodies remember. And more than that, bodies eventually stop cooperating with old survival strategies once the danger that created them has passed. That's exactly what's happening to you right now. The version of you that learned to shrink is running out of excuses to keep shrinking. And what's emerging is a person whose looks and body are simply catching up to who they actually are underneath all that old armor. That's why people cannot stop talking about you. Not because you suddenly shape-shifted into a different person overnight, but because the person you always were underneath is finally being allowed to breathe on the surface. I want you to think about the last time someone complimented you and you immediately swatted it away, made a joke, deflected, said something like, "Oh, stop," or changed the subject before they could even finish the sentence. That reflex, that instinct to minimize the moment someone acknowledges your looks or your presence, that's the old programming. That's the part of you that learned somewhere, probably earlier than you'd like to admit, that being fully witnessed was dangerous, that it was safer to make yourself smaller than the acknowledgement being offered to you. But here's what's shifting right now, in real time, whether you fully feel it yet or not. That programming is losing its grip. And it's losing its grip because your body, your actual, physical, undeniable presence, is starting to outpace the old fear. You're starting to look like someone your nervous system hasn't fully caught up to yet. That's exactly why the comments are getting more intense, more specific, more surprising, even to the people making them. They're not describing the old you, the cautious folded-in version who used to apologize for taking up oxygen. They're describing a version of you that's stepping forward, stepping into something that was always yours but was kept under lock and key for way too long. And when someone witnesses another person stepping into themselves like that, it does something to them. Always. It makes them stare a beat too long. It makes them bring you up in conversations you never even knew were happening. It makes them trip over their own words, trying to explain what exactly it is about you that's different. Because the truth is, they don't have the vocabulary for it. Nobody really does. There's no clean way to say your presence has gotten heavier and lighter at the same time. More solid and more free, simultaneously. So instead they just talk about your looks, your body, the way you carry yourself, because that's the closest translation their language gives them. And listen, this isn't about vanity. This isn't about becoming consumed with how you look in a mirror, or chasing validation from whoever happens to glance your way. This is about something far more rooted than that. It's about your body finally being allowed to reflect the internal renovation you've already been doing. Whether you've been doing it intentionally, methodically, or just by surviving everything you've survived up to this exact point. Every brutal year, every version of yourself you had to outgrow. Every moment you kept moving forward, even when you were running on fumes. All of that eventually gets etched into how a person carries themselves. It shows in the eyes. It shows in the jawline. Yeah. It shows in the way someone's shoulders finally settle when they stop expecting the next hit. That's what people are picking up on. That's the actual substance behind the comment. There's something about them. It's a recognition of everything you've weathered, finally surfacing in your physical presence in a way that other people can literally see, even if they can't explain it back to you with any kind of precision. Here's the part that might be the hardest to hear, but also the part that changes everything once it actually sinks in. The reason this attention, these comments, this sudden wave of people clocking your looks and your body feels almost too much, almost uncomfortable, is because some part of you still isn't accustomed to being witnessed like this. You spent a long time being the person who deflected, who stayed in the margins, who let other people take the spotlight instead of standing in it yourself. And now your body is doing something your old reflexes haven't adjusted to yet. It's insisting, really insisting, on being seen, even while the rest of you is still flinching at the idea of it. That gap between how visible you are becoming and how invisible you trained yourself to be. That's where all this internal static is coming from. That's why hearing that people are talking about you feels almost too enormous to hold. It's not because it isn't real. It's because you're still calibrating to a version of reality where you're allowed to occupy this much space without offering an apology for it. But here's what's actually happening underneath all that discomfort, and I want this to land with surgical clarity. You are not becoming someone new. You are becoming someone accurate. The face, the body, the presence that people are reacting to right now. That's not a mask you put on. That's the removal of a mask you were wearing for years. The mask of smallness. The mask of blending in. The mask of making yourself forgettable so nobody would have a reason to comment on you, compare you, or come for you. That mask is coming off, piece by piece, and what's underneath? Simply you, undiluted. And undiluted you, my little supernova, is apparently impossible to stop talking about. Think about how many small, seemingly insignificant moments led here. The mornings you kept showing up even when every cell in your body was voting against it. The version of you that decided somewhere along the way, quietly, without fanfare, without announcing it to a single soul, that you were done shrinking. The days you caught your own reflection and didn't recognize the calm on your face, because it had been so long since your face was allowed to rest instead of brace for whatever was coming next. Every one of those moments compounded into the presence you're carrying right now.